I believe if you have been using social media that you will not have been able to escape the name Andrew Tate. You likely know the appearance of this name as well. For those of you who don't know who Andrew Tate is, he is the former world kickboxing champion, and he blew up on social media. And he became, as I read, the most Googled human being in 2022. Beyond there, he was deplatformed by big tech for accusations of spreading a misogynist message. And so this is not a video for love or hate of Andrew. I don't know who Andrew is. But he promoted himself as one who was free from the matrix. And beyond there, he led millions of young men to be free from the matrix in accordance with how he saw it as freedom. At this time, Andrew has been arrested on accusations of human trafficking and rape and organised crime. And so this is a bizarre story inside the story of humanity at this time. It's a bizarre manifestation. And I am not here to share about the details, but I am here to say that if you are going to go to war, if you are going to go into battle with the matrix of Satan, you have to understand how it works. And you can't fight Satan with the toolbox that the matrix gave you. And this is what Andrew did. And this is where Andrew made a catastrophic error. He has not opened or spoke about the true human capacity outside of the matrix. And so if you are to understand what I am saying, you need to understand the workings of the satanic matrix. And who am I to share that? Well, as a human being, as a man, I once made the error of walking in line with the God of this world. And the God of this world is Satan. And Andrew Tate has served Satan for many years, whether he says it verbally or not, he has. And you can do that and not realize that you are. And in doing so, I got free of that. And there are layers to waking up from the matrix. There are those who awaken from the matrix not because they get wealthy and materially powerful, but because they decide to live a simple life. There are those who make monetary wealth and then they awaken. There are those who awaken whilst living the normal grind. Wealth and money has nothing to do with awakening, but what tends to happen is that when you have wealth and money, you have space. You get off that treadmill of survival, the survival environment of the matrix. And when you get off there, you get an opportunity to study that which you were running on. And when you do that, you begin to awaken. So a simple life or wealth can do all of this, but it's not a necessity. And having material wealth is not awakening from the matrix. It can help, I am certain of that, because it gives you time to reflect, to slow down, to look, to examine, time to evolve, to transform. When you're caught on the treadmill of survival in the matrix, you rarely get that time to transform because you feel so strained that you use all of your energy seeking pleasure to find some meaning in this world. And this is part of the trap. And so what is this matrix of Satan about? It's not about money. It's not about wealth. These are just mechanisms of control. What it's truly about, as Yeshua said, you wrestle not against flesh and blood, but spiritual wickedness in high places. You can't fight that wickedness with the toolbox of the world. You have to fight with your spiritual toolbox, which is atrophied, which is lost due to how you were trained by society, the perceptions programmed into you by society as a child. This world and the element we speak of as the God of this world, the ruler of this world, as Yeshua said, the prince of this world. The prince of this world is Satan. And that force, the fallen ones, the fallen species, demonic entities, however you want to call it, that are running the show, that are the God of this world, the ruler of this world, they have an energy need. And they can only get that energy need to continue their sojourn. Now, their sojourn, first of all, if you imagine the story of Yeshua, here you have the creation field. And that is the generous heart of God pouring forth all things, including infinite potential and free will. And Yeshua, as a being, is supposed to have surrendered to the will of that. And in surrendering to the will of Creator, gained great dominance over certain elements of reality and an ability to drive out dark forces or cast out demons, etc. This came from surrendering to the will of God, to the will of unconditioned love. The fallen don't wish to surrender. They wish to control it. They wish to supersede it. And I say through technology, through analysis. And when you do that, even as a human, when you analyze reality constantly, you walk by sight and not faith. When you constantly analyze reality, you create an analyzer inside and a subject of analysis outside, and the space of unity where the true power of spirit that a human has in this world is deactivated. Because in unity with the generous heart of God, in unity with creation, in unity with God, you gain access to the spiritual attributes. In separation, you lose them. And so the fallen wish to supersede it, and they have an energy need. That energy need can't be taken from this world unless the light of the generous heart of God falls. Now, you can't make a tree fall. It's doing its thing. It's growing as the generous heart of God, the creation field, wills. The sun is shining. You can't make that fall. It's doing what it should. The only place you can make it fall is inside a human organism or inside sentient life with free will. For sentient life with free will has an opportunity to say no to the generous heart of God and its will for its life. And so as the energy that you are is gifted to you by the universe, by creation, by God, if you nurture and protect that vitality and you give yourself over and seek the will of the generous heart of God for your life, the will of God for you, for your manifestation as this human organism that you are. If you switch out your own selfish will, your own sense of self, selfish desires, selfish ambition for the will of God, and you nurture the vitality, you will move towards the plan that God has for the creation in the shape that you are in this world. If, however, instead of storing that energy up, you constantly spend it on short-term pleasure, on gain, you begin worshipping the God of this world. You exchange this gift of energy that you can use, and God can use the organism that you are, the soul in this organism, to manifest the will of God in this world. But you have to have your vitality to do that. And you spend it on short-term pleasure. Constantly, on that term we say sin. You sell yourself into the sensory experience of the flesh rather than the joy of moving in an original creation. And so instead of building up and serving, you're tied to the world. You're tied to your pornography, to your drugs, to whatever else it is, manipulation of people to get what you want. When you worship the world in that way, that's the light of God falling in you, and that's the energy that the God of this world wants. The God of this world can't extract that energy unless it has humans that build structures to extract it. And Andrew Tate became hyper-wealthy by building structures that tie men to sexual addiction, pornography, that tie women into that industry as well. The industry of pornography is a space whereby which the energy of man can be harvested. Young men are hooked on this, older men too. They are selling the vitality gifted by all of creation, by the sacrifice of life that allows you to live, and they are exchanging it just for a sensation, nothing else. And Andrew Tate built structures for that to happen. And also the women within there are having their temple of God, which is supposed to be the home for their children. It's supposed to be a space of love and respect and honor. They are selling that electronically to these men, and they too are in as much bondage as the men are. And so Andrew Tate built the structure for that to happen. He was serving Satan, and in exchange for that service to Satan, Satan gave him immense material wealth, because that's what Satan has to offer and nothing else. Beyond there, he had casinos, which is the same story, tying man to the dopamine hit, to the world, to the energy of the world, degrading your fellow man in exchange for material gain. And this is the idea of the God of this world, the survival of the fittest. But the true God of compassion is not like that. The true God of compassion is about compassion and not survival of the fittest. And so Andrew Tate not only served Satan in building these structures and helping Satan extract this energy from mankind, but he also promoted to millions that this is what it is to be free from the matrix, to have all of this wealth. At what cost? At the cost of your fellow man and their soul energy, at the cost of their heart, at the cost of their lives. Now, the funny thing is that as I looked into Andrew, because of this is why it drew my attention. He became Muslim, and his Muslim brothers didn't tell him that he'd had a false pretense here, because Islam forbids pornography, it forbids gambling. And so they should have said you have to sever from those industries, otherwise you're not actually doing what you're supposed to do. Likewise with Christianity, it's forbidden. And when Andrew started these industries, he was atheist. But as he got wealth, because he was targeting only wealth, he began to awaken. And he said, I saw him say, that when you have so much money, you run out of things to buy. And this is where you begin to see through the empty box that the God of this world offers you. And it is an empty box. The God of this world can only offer you that nonsense. And I know from experience, the wealth I accumulated with ways that I should not have been doing it. There is nothing wrong with wealth. There's nothing wrong with abundance. But when it's done at the expense of your fellow man, or the expense of creation, or when it's done purely for your own selfish desires, there's a problem. I did not amount and amass the wealth that Andrew did, but I, as all humans are different, saw through the offer faster. I had the sports cars, a few sports cars. I had the top floor flat in the city. I was going out to the bars, buying the clothes, and it was nowhere near the level of wealth Andrew has, but it was enough for this human organism to see through it quickly. And I recognized, for all I had this wealth and space and time, that it was meaningless, it was empty. And I saw that this will never be, no matter what I buy, no matter what car I have, I am going to find nothing but a dead end. I saw through it quickly. And that's when I gave my life to God, after I made no secret of it, breaking the law, etc. I said no to it. I said no to the offer, and I opposed Satan in doing that. And Satan does not like it when you switch sides. He does not like it. And I surrendered to God and said, whatever your will is, not this is what I'm doing, God help me, but whatever your will is, this is it, I'm here. What's my highest good? And that led me into fasting, etc. But I say this because I saw Andrew say that, and he began to wake up. I've got all the money I could possibly want, and there's nothing to buy. That told an extremely important message, that this human being had recognized there's nothing here. He had done this to his fellow man. He had done this to these women. And how on earth did he do it? Well, he was disciplined. He was disciplined, but he was not looking to God. He was looking at self, and self, me, self, is where Satan works. And the difference between a human who has awoken from the matrix and a human who is tied to the matrix is that when you get further down the line, self becomes a nothingness. And it's like this: you are brought into the matrix as a child and you are given a birth certificate identity. You are a name, a nationality, an academic achievement, and it's this linear identity. When you go through this identity, you build a structure of separation, a sense of self in thought inside of you based upon your memories and based upon these roles and labels. But if you can become aware that you are the nationality, aware of your name, if you can be aware of your achievements, you have to acknowledge that your core nature before these roles and events, that you have built a structure of who you are in your mind, a self, that you are the awareness that is aware of them. And that awareness is never changing, it's stable, and that is the space where we enter, where our selfish ambitions, our selfish desires, etc., they fade. And in that space where you are aware that you are these roles, if Andrew Tate were to become aware that he was a world kickboxing champion, aware that he had achieved what he had monetarily, aware that he was English American, aware that he was Andrew Tate, if he can become aware of that, truly aware, he has to acknowledge that he is none of those things. He is the awareness that is aware. And when you move to that space, you begin to get free from the matrix identity. And when you get free from that matrix identity, you begin to be able to move with the will of God, because you are empty. And the conditioner of God, the element of the human which deviates from the will of God, manifesting in your intelligence and actions, is that self. It's that self and its desires and its beliefs and its perceptions. And that's the way whereby which the Bible says we should walk by faith and not sight. If you walk by the self and its analysis and its beliefs and its perceptions, you walk by sight. If you walk by faith, the self has gone and the organism returns itself here and now to the will of unconditioned love, the will of the generous heart of God, and says, what is the organism to do? The organism asks that, not the self in the mind, not the sense of self based in your memories, but the organism in its heart and soul, standing before all of creation, admits it knows nothing and allows creation to take it on the journey God wants it to be on. And that journey is never hedonistic. That journey is never ever hedonistic, because God loves you too much to sell you into the bondage of these empty short-term gifts that the God of this world can offer you. And so Andrew Tate began to wake up. He began to see there's nothing left to buy. And he began to see the truth of the matrix, one layer of it, that many are targeting and aiming for all these material gains. But it's an empty box once you can access it all. It's meaningless. And people waste their whole life on pursuit of that meaninglessness. Now the problem is that when he began to wake up, he recognized that there must be a God and a devil. And he went to war with the matrix of Satan. But he went to war with the self and the toolbox and the material gain that Satan had given him. And you can't win that battle. You can't. The God of this world, let's imagine it in this way. You have the third dimension, the fourth dimension, the fifth. Let's say a higher dimension, that 11th and 12th dimension is the dimension of Christ. That's why Jesus the man accessed the Christ and could command demons in this world, could cast them out. Because the demonic influence, the fallen ones, operate from the fourth dimension. You live in the third dimension. Unless you can elevate your frequency over the top of the fourth dimension, you can't get dominion over them. You can't fight from underneath the fourth dimension with the third dimensional tools and expect a good outcome. You can't do it. You must open the gifts of spirit, and this is the peculiar thing, that we have been trained that the way we move in this reality is you have intelligence in your hands and your actions and your speech, and that's your influence and impact on reality. And this is the fallen nature of the fall of Adam and Eve. This is not the true capacities of a human being. The true capacities of a human being are completely different. The toolbox I used to amount wealth when I was doing what I should not and inadvertently serving the God of this world, pursuing hedonism, etc., that toolbox is completely different to the toolbox I use to live my life now, serving God. And in the service to God, I have met with demonic forces. There are endless conspiracy theories online about the elites and children and sacrifice and things like that. We built a community, this YouTube community built a community in Tanzania. That community provides protection, housing, a family home for nearly 200 children. And many of those children are known societally to be targeted by a witch doctor religion. And that witch doctor religion sacrifices these children. We are the protector from that religion in Tanzania. We have a physical protection with the Maasai warriors, but we have a spiritual element. When you take a child that has been sliced up, ready for a ceremony, which I have physically done, when you do that, you meet with demonic forces, and you soon learn that you can't do anything against them from the physicality. And that's where things like fasting and prayer and praying in spirit comes in, because what you are doing is recognizing that frequency is the language of God and frequency is the language of Satan, and frequency is the currency of Satan. Frequency is the currency of God, if you will. If you can elevate your frequency into the Spirit, into the Holy Spirit space, you will have dominion. You will be able to drive out these entities from yourself, your family, your loved ones, and even people on the street, if you are so called to do, and drive them away from the attacks that we all face in this realm, and they are present. If your frequency is in bondage to the world, to sin, to taking instead of nurturing the vitality that you hold, instead of doing that, you burn it up and you take it and you exchange it for short-term pleasure, then your frequency is accessible by the demonic. You can be influenced by the demonic. Likewise, if you are too wrapped up in self and arrogance and meanness, and that materiality is all you are not soul, spirit, there is no God to even comprehend, that frequency also comes under the catchment of the fallen. And so if you want to go to war with Satan and the God of this matrix, you really need your spiritual toolbox. You need the power of spirit to move in you. If you do not keep the channel for spirit open in your life, for the Christ open in your life, if you don't keep that open, you're going to fail. Because you can use your material wealth to do things in this world, but without the frequency of the Christ around you, then all kinds of things can happen to you. And likewise, if you go against the system whilst not understanding what the system is for, which clearly I believe Andrew did not, otherwise he would not. He would have renounced and publicly said, I made a huge error in making these industries. I enslaved my man to the architect of the matrix. I enslaved my fellow man and these women to the architect of the matrix, to the fallen ones. I made a massive mistake. Don't try to pursue the life I had. And he never, because he doesn't understand the matrix fully. He thinks the matrix, due to his perceptions, was material gain, and he started to realize it's not. It's just not. And so, I think I cover what I want to cover. The structure of the spiritual foundations of the matrix, you need to know them. And you will learn about them not through the computer, not through a book hardly. Perhaps some writings, etc. you can learn a little. You can learn a lot actually. But the insight that you require, the capacities, the ability you require, won't come from reading the book about the car. It comes from getting in the car and driving it. You need to start overcoming this world. You need to start overcoming the matrix self as well as the matrix. And with that, you enter into the space of fasting and prayer and meditation and moving in a way where you nurture that energy for the will of God, not nurture that energy for selfish gain, and not spend that energy on being enslaved to the world, selling it into short-term pleasure. The longer you stay nurturing that in your purity, there you will start to decode the reality around you, the bandwidth of reality that you can, and you will see, as some of us have begun to do, you will see the fallen ones. You will remove the fallen ones from people and their minions. You will do as 1/3 of Yeshua's ministry was, cast out demons. You will purify and drive these beings away from your fellow man. And you certainly will not build structures that allow these beings to feed on your fellow man. And when you finally do awaken from the matrix, you would renounce those structures and tell everybody what you did was an error. And I believe Andrew Tate may be on that path. But for now, he went to war with Satan without the toolbox of spirit. And so I don't know what will happen in this scenario, of course. There is a due course of law. Some say that there's something disingenuous about it, etc. But I say this, that if young men were following him, then they need to know the poison that's been put in there. You can spend your whole life chasing that, and if you succeed and you get all the money in the world, but you're spiritually empty, you will soon see that there's nothing in this world to buy and there's nothing this world can offer you, and that you just sold your soul to the devil in exchange for meaningless emptiness. And the true fulfillment will come when you seek the will of unconditioned love, the will of the one true source of all creation, the will of that love of Christ to manifest in your intelligence and determine what the human organism that you formerly mistook for this matrix identity, this birth certificate identity, is here to do for that light of creation, for the love of God. That was it. You've got to know this matrix. There's so many layers to the awakening. That was all. God bless, guys.